Today, I'm going to go through not necessarily a type of workflow, but kind of a best practices for larger workflows. The good news is we're seeing a lot of clients jump right into more sophisticated, real agentic workflows. This is what makes AI, act and function like real employees within a firm. And there's a tendency to want to one-shot it, as they call. LLMs are very powerful, but there's kind of a standard best practice that really helps you get the most out of your LLM, whether or not you're using AdvisorClaw or any other product. And we call that BPI, which we summarize here. So you can think of this as brainstorm, process, and then implement. And these are really important steps. So if you're just doing a one-off task, obviously you don't necessarily need to do this, but we encourage people out of the gate to kind of enforce this methodology irrespective of what you're working on, because then you'll really start to be able to understand why it makes sense. The first is just brainstorm, talk out loud with the LLM. This is why the planning agent is there, is to help you think through things. And 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, you'll have missed something. The LLM will need clarification on something. And again, this is irrespective of what model you're using, frontier, open source, it doesn't matter. This is just how language models work. The next is processing. This is important too. Again, we'll go through a live example with actually one of our workflows. But to the extent that you can, yes, you can have the LLMs, pretty much do everything for you. But if you can strategically help them shortcut some things, especially as it relates to data processing, that doesn't mean you need to do it yourself, but have the LLM or a sub-agent, have the agent or the sub-agent do it first, and then get into the implementation phase. So by chunking up the task into multiple pieces, and these are kind of the 3 ways to think about it, it'll be much more efficient. It'll be the quality of the output will be much higher, pretty much categorically. So this is actually our box that we use. We have several internally, but this is one for our OCIO business. This is a fresh one, so I'm going to start from scratch as if we'd never used this before. So we don't have any, some of the other ones you've seen, existing file structures and agents. This is brand new out of the box. And what we want to do specifically is we've got a series of portfolios that we run, and we want to start tracking attribution within AdvisorClaw on this daily. So obviously there's a lot of, existing solutions that we have that do this, but part of the use of AdvisorClaw is that you're able to replicate a lot of existing SaaS solutions in here. It's more efficient, and in some cases it's much cheaper. And we've got other videos where clients have done, frankly, pretty astounding jobs at replicating expensive legacy SaaS solutions. So the first thing is we've got a PDF. So, let's think about brainstorm. Let's just talk with the agent here. By default, it should be IDX DeepSeek. That's good. That's what we want. Again, as you start getting in this, you'll realize that Kimi is a little bit better for coding specific tasks. GLM is powerful all around. DeepSeek is kind of the best for brainstorming. So I'd like to brainstorm about a project that we're going to implement. Specifically, we have a number of portfolios that we manage, and we would like to track attribution on a regular cadence, be it daily or weekly. I'd like to think through the steps to set this up in a robust fashion, as there are changes to the portfolios over time, and they each have constituent securities that we'll need to pull and update pricing for. Currently, I have a PDF with all the different portfolios and weights with a particular date stamp. My thought is setting up a dedicated agent with a dedicated project folder and capturing each of those portfolios and their constituent securities with the relevant allocations and date in either a markdown file or a SQLite database. And then separately, setting up a cron job to pull adjusted prices for each of the relevant constituent securities on a daily basis. And then using both of those sets of information to have an agent run a deterministic Python script that it creates on a regular cadence, either daily or weekly, for example, to calculate relevant portfolio performance, attribution, etc. What are your thoughts? What am I missing? How do we best approach this? So you'll see this is one of the reasons I like to literally chat with the LLM, is because as you start working with agents, you'll find it's just much quicker. This is also one of the reasons we like DeepSeek. It's already spitting things out. And you'll see, I want a couple of things. It's important to prompt it that you'd want to brainstorm up front, because that instantly puts it into a different trajectory, which is importantly a diagnostic workflow, as opposed to worrying about the LLM, starting to write code. These things are very eager. Like we say, we always joke, think about this as a very eager grad student out of school, but you need to put, very kind of strict guardrails and instructions. Also, I thought through this myself too. With anything with a PDF, we've got kind of two sets of relevant information. The one is the portfolio weights, which are updated, with some periodicity, quarterly, semi-annually, whatever it is, and then the constituent securities themselves, which in this case we know we want to pull daily adjusted pricing. So let's see what it says here. Yeah, SQLite database is better than Markdown, which we suspected. This is also one of the powerful reasons to run something like AdvisorClaw as opposed to, just a LLM chat, is even if the LLM chat, some of them these days actually are pretty decent with having sandboxes where they can run specific tool calls like SQL. But you're setting up, this is a computer, so you can have it set up your own database for you, which really extends the capabilities over time. Daily pricing pipeline, essential. Yes, that makes sense. Notice too, I said deterministic attribution script. This is, again, part of LLM best practice is, yes, they can do a lot of things solo and autonomously, and that's phenomenal. But when you start thinking about any kind of repetitive production workflow, you want to put as much of that into code as possible. So for example, the daily or weekly attribution and performance reporting, the LLM should not be writing that script every day. We want it to write that script once and then call that same script so that it's the exact same thing day in, day out. That's highly efficient on tokenization, the token inference, but then it also just limits the blast radius for any type of errors. So what's missing? Portfolios change, weight shift, the single biggest risk. Yeah, so this is good. I mean, this is thinking in the context of a backtest, which this is important because we'll be running this, live going forward. Practically speaking, the architecture doesn't change, but practically speaking, this isn't an issue. But this is a huge issue with backtesting. This is one of my pet peeves that you see on, some of these, vibe coded backtesting platforms. Aside from the fact that everybody's using prices instead of first difference returns as a dependent variable, the look-ahead bias is just absurd. Corporate actions, that's good. The big one is dividends. We're not looking at individual stocks here. If we were, and again, if this were a back test, we would need, survivorship bias free data set. Benchmark mapping, that's also fine. Yeah, attribution factor based, and we'll define the factors here. Okay, so now what I'm going to tell it to do. So it's recommending an implementation plan, which is good. So we're going to set this up. I'm going to go ahead and just have the main agent set this up. So Y Finance is fine. It's actually very robust. But we also recommend in the config, go ahead and under API keys, we like Alpha Advantage. You can set up FMP, Massive, there's a bunch. Alpha Advantage is very cheap. In fact, I think their free tier is extremely generous. Just get an Alpha Advantage key, drop that in here, and then you can specify to have the agent use Alpha Advantage. But for now, I'm just going to answer specifically. So I'm going to actually, so I wanted to just, to start, I wanted to just do simple SPY, MDY, SPSM. I also wanted to do the S&P equal weight value and growth ETFs. The problem is the market cap weighted ones are so dominated by the market cap effect. It just is basically all momentum, all growth, that even the value ETF isn't really giving you kind of the factor attribution we want. So I'm going to do RPG, RPV, and that's it for now. Well, actually, we should do AG, IEF for 10-year. Let's do credit as well. And you can have it recommend simple factors. Benchmarks, 60/40. Weekly is fine. This is more. Now I'm also going to ask it, as a separate matter regarding implementation, is this best spearheaded by a dedicated separate agent? Or can you go ahead and implement, and then we can hand off to separate agents or cron jobs to run the component parts? One thing you'll realize when you start talking to agents is you start to go a little bit Christopher Walken, starting to think about what you're saying. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and upload this. I'm going to go ahead and prompt it here just to make sure it's not waiting. So you can see here it's writing code. This is one of the big reasons. I mean, we've had literally hundreds of Python scripts that we've been running for, the better part of 2 decades now, and we've moved everything over to having agents run it because they're just instantaneous. So that's one thing. The temptation, we've started to see this again. This is why we're enforcing best practices. The temptation is to just dump a bunch on the agent and have it one shot a bunch of things, but you want to take the time to, make sure if it's going to write code, understand if it can be used again. If it's going to be used again, if it's a one shot, that's fine. But if it's something that's going to be used again, make sure that the agent knows that, thinks about that, and just, it's about efficiencies. It's the same thing as if you were, managing an employee. Okay. All right, so under the attribution folder, again, one of the huge benefits of having this on a dedicated provisioned Linux computer is that it's got a robust file system, just like any computer. Oh, see, this is interesting. I'm going to override that. I'd rather keep it simple and, just interpret it with the embedded multicollinearity. That's kind of part of the point. All right, it keeps complaining about look ahead. I'm going to let it know that this is only going to be used at, for production point in time. All right, so let it pull the data first. A couple of things to highlight is this ingest portfolios. So any kind of script that, this is dependent on the same PDF shape every single time, which may or may not be the case. So this is where I'm gonna ask it what it suggests, but this is where you might want to have an agent just manually ingest whatever the input is and conform it to a specific known output shape. So one thing I'm going to do here, just because this is a known issue with LLMs, is anytime they go through an OCR exercise, basically image recognition, which PDFs are, you want to have a QA agent go through and double check it. So I'm actually going to set up a separate agent to do this concurrently, and its only job is going to be PDF. For that, I'm going to stay on DeepSeek. DeepSeek is good for that. Kimi is fine as a fallback. So let's create that agent. And so now this agent is going to have its own workspace, its own context, or I should say its own folder. So now under PDF extractor, to be safe, I'm actually going to the OR endowment models PDF contains columns of portfolios with allocation weights across instruments that span different asset classes. I want this relevant information in a normalized table format in Markdown with date, portfolio, asset class, instrument, expense ratio, and allocation as the columns. Does that make sense? So again, this, if we go back to what this looks like, this makes sense to all of us, but again, this is just good data management 101. You want this to be what they call a normalized database, where you've just got columns. That's how SQL's laid out. And so again, I'm kind of this is one thing to be aware of when you talk. But again, this is keeping it on Rails. So the other, my guess is the other agent. Well, let's just see what he's doing. Yeah, so he's figuring it out. He's crunching through it, which is good. But with the PDF extractor agent, I'm kind of giving him the shortcut. This is also part of the a large part of the utility of AdvisorClaw, as opposed to just an off-the-shelf solution, is it's called like PDF extractor, for example. It's using tools in the background, Python scripts, as well as customized agents in the background to format and process data, and we're continually updating this, including on the open source models. We haven't yet put this into production, but we have our own versions of DeepSeek on our servers. So these ones are on these. I mean, these are our servers, but these are the existing weights. We're starting to fine tune the weights so that they're calibrated a little more, a little more at the edge cases for finance, including we're going to upload, dedicated LLM that all it does is OCR extraction. So let's see. All right, so let me just go ahead and take a look at this. All right, so this is great. This shape is exactly what we want. So now, honestly, as I think about it, the PDF extractor should be an agent everybody sets up right away. In fact, we should probably start shipping them with this. But this is what you want. You can upload this right into SQL. It's highly deterministic. There's no no interpretation whatsoever. Okay, and it's coming back with observations, so great. All right, so let's go back to the main agent. Okay, great. I had a dedicated agent extract the information from the PDF and put it into normalized relational format in a markdown file under the PDF-extractor folder. Can you see that markdown file and review it? for quality and consistency versus what you got? So again, this red team, blue team is really important for quality. Any kind of project like this, we do it as basically as a matter of course for everything. In fact, one of the models that we're going to inject into here is a custom model we have where they call it council mode, and every single query it sends to two of the top open source models, again on our servers in the US, and have them review each other. But this is especially if you're getting into writing code. This is also one of the benefits of customizing open source models, because not only can you ensure no vendor lock-in, which is becoming a huge issue, we call it privacy, fidelity, efficiency, but because they're so cheap, I mean, you can already see this is the savings, by the way, which is calculating, because we're using our models, which come shipped, for free. If we were using frontier models, and this isn't even the craziest, this isn't Fable or the latest GPT. This is, I think, just using like Opus 4.7 or 8. Just this exercise already would have already cost us $3, which I can tell you, on my personal AdvisorClaw box, this number is hitting $10,000 every single month. All right, let's see what it says here. Perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. Exactly what we want to see. So that extra, 95 cents or whatever check we had with the quality assurance agent paid off. Okay, so now let's get back to implementation here. I'm just going to ask it. Okay, great. Are we ready to run the first performance and factor attribution report as of this month? A couple other things to note. This is fully open architecture, so you can wire this into literally anything you want. This is your computer. So to keep it simple, these are kind of the standard API keys. The two frontier providers, if you want to do that. Grok, which is one that we love. It's really good for kind of real-time sentiment, expert takes. Twitter is a phenomenal source of information, but the signal is very valuable, but the signal to noise ratio is very low. So you need an agent to sift through all that. I have cron jobs. Okay, so it already set that up. Wow, I didn't even have to do that. I'm actually a little bit impressed with that. I have a bunch of cron jobs where all it does is, every Sunday, give me the macro take from experts on Twitter, give me the, latest AI stocks that are being talked about, filter out the hype accounts. What are the fixed income experts saying? That's one of the biggest democratizing forces, honestly, in the last 5 to 10 years is information that used to be exclusively behind kind of sell side gates now just goes straight to Twitter. But again, you gotta have a junior agent go through and filter it out real time. Oh, so look, it already ran this report. So let's go ahead and here. Okay, so it's doing it. This is one thing. So the reports are natively HTML. Oh, this is JSON. So I want this. I'm gonna have it do two things. I'm gonna have it create the report in both Markdown. Markdown is just text file. It's what LLMs essentially convert everything into before it becomes ones and zeros. So that's why I told it to do that PDF extraction exercise in Markdown. Again, it just saves a step. But then also HTMLs. I predict we're going to start seeing a lot of reporting formats go straight to HTML because it renders really well. It's interactive. We just send HTML files to clients and they open it up now natively in whatever the browser is, Chrome. And it's on their desktop. It's private. It's there's no issues with data, but it's a really rich, feature-rich, engaging way to interact with data. So this is a JSON file. So I'm going to tell it. Okay. Oh, great. So it's already okay. So this is Markdown. So it's okay. Okay, great. Please turn this into an aesthetically pleasing HTML file that I can circulate as an internal memo. What we have a lot of clients doing is exactly this, and then they'll upload them into their websites, and you just use it, behind firewalls and things like that. Use it internally for exactly this, internal memos that are, essentially cloud-based, or you just email it, and again, people can upload it. The nice thing about HTML is it can, especially for things like this, it can fit a lot of data in there, so it doesn't necessarily need to connect to a database or anything like that. And then this cron job is going to run. You can see in here. we can edit these settings. A quick note. So let me actually use as an example. I'm going to set up a new cron job. So we have daily digest loaded as a custom task. This is what I was talking about. Runs 5 days a week. And this is basically what it does. You can edit this file. So you can go, for now you have to edit it within the workspace, but you can edit this and tell it to focus on whatever you want it to focus on. We've got one guy that was pulling latest expert World Cup picks. So again, this is completely open architecture. And then it saves the report to the folder. Again, this is a new box, so it hasn't run it yet. All right, so it's running that. Let's go ahead and refresh. But again, you can see this is just to bring it back to this, by going through kind of the brainstorming phase, then the data processing, and this includes the red team, blue team, setting up that dedicated PDF extraction agent. And then the implementation phase, it makes it a lot more efficient, a lot higher quality, and just more robust going forward. So one thing I'm going to do, you saw I had to, prompt it here. And again, this is just LLM 101 that's going to happen. But I'm going to set up a dedicated, so this is DeepSeek, which again, we like as a default, but Kimmy's really good at coding. So I'm going to have Kimmy take that attribution JSON file. So I'm going to go ahead and just download this. All right, so and I'm going to call this fallback is DeepSeek. Actually, yeah. Okay, so now HTML creator. By the way, the system folders that you see with the agents after you spawn them contain all the identity files for the agents. You never have to touch these, but you can. So you can go in here and update any or all of these. Really, the highest value one is the soul file. These all inherit our baseline soul file, which is again oriented around being an analyst. But for example, if you were doing PDF extraction at scale, you may want to tweak that. So for now, please turn the attribution 2026 July 17 JSON file into a cosmetically appealing HTML report that can be circulated as a memo. Okay, so Kimmy cooked right through that, as I suspected it would. And here's what it looks like. Obviously, this has no branding, but this is good because you can make this interactive, which is one of the reasons we like. So obviously, this is simple. Think of this as kind of a minimum viable product, but you can see the sky's the limit with this. So that's great. And it looks like DeepSeek is still cranking through it. Again, this is also one of the reasons it's nice to think about, this is a kind of a useful real world exercise to think about how to parse this out, to different agents with different specialties. At the beginning, it feels like it might be overkill, but you can kind of quickly see that it's not. So at any rate, it's going on 30 minutes, but you can see in 30 minutes, this is the type of workflow that, candidly, even us with these, Python files already built on our side, when you start thinking about things like artifact generation, translating raw data into processing it, normalizing it, analyzing it, and then turning it into an artifact that can be distributed, to be able to 30 minutes to set this up as an ongoing process, you can really start to see the power of agentic workflows and essentially agentic employees.